you all.
Now live.
That was the cue, so now let's get started. We'll let everyone introduce themselves briefly, and then we get going. So we take our virtual guest to begin with, so let's start with Nidhi.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone, and I hope you're all having an amazing conference day. My name is Nidhi Sachdeva, and I'm here in Toronto. It has been sunny for a few days, but today it's a bit of a overcast. All is good. I hope you have better weather. I teach at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education in the Teacher Education Program, and I'm really passionate about bringing every day a little bit more evidence in education. And I learn from all of you, and we mutually sort of work towards providing that important information to teachers. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, Kennet, Eva, Arnold, and Dylan.
Okay, thank you, Nidhi. And Dylan?
When I speak in Australia or New Zealand or in Canada, it's usually traditional to acknowledge the country that has been unseeded. I've never heard it said in the United States, so I'm starting to try a new trend. I'm speaking to you from the traditional and unceded grounds of the Yamacraw people in Savannah, in Georgia. My name is Dylan Wiliam. I'm an emeritus professor of educational assessment at UCL, but I now live in the United States and work with teachers around the world on helping improve classroom teaching.
Okay, thank you, Dylan. And then over to Arnold.
Over to me, right. So many of you probably already know me. My name is Arnold Pears, originally from Australia, as you can tell immediately from the accent when I speak English. A little bit harder if I'm speaking Swedish, but you know. So I've been here for 25 years, first in computer science as a teacher of computing education at Uppsala University, and then the last 6 or 7 years as professor of engineering education and head of the Department of Learning and Engineering Sciences at KTH, the Royal Institute of Technology, where amongst other things, I'm responsible for our teacher education programs. And my big interest and passion at the moment is in trying to understand how AI, and especially generative AI, might change the way that we go about pursuing learning.
Okay, thank you. And maybe we'll let our organizer and co-host introduce herself as well.
Well, I'm Eva Hartell. I work in Haninge as educational researcher. I have a background as a STEM teacher, and I'm hosting researchED Scandinavia, and also a hobby. I've co-hosted some events with podcast with Kennet.
Okay, thank you. I think let's start with one round. So we start with Nidhi, then Dylan, then Arnold. And Eva will step in every time she wants to. But start with like benefits and opportunities that you can see with using AI in education. So please start, Nidhi.
Okay, perfect. So I think it's a really exciting topic and one that everybody's talking about. It's my first reaction is this idea that AI is here and it's not going anywhere. So the thought that I always think about is that now we got to learn ways to coexist with it and be co-intelligent with it. So some of the benefits and opportunities, and I'm sure much of that would be covered by my wonderful colleagues here too, but you know, things like opportunities like using it as a personal tutor, for example. So it's a pretty promising application to use AI as a personal tutor. Khan Academy has been doing some really great work with that, because that bottleneck that happens when a student's learning and there is a challenge and not receiving the feedback at the right time, that feedback bottleneck is a real thing. So if we could support our learners to be able to use it as a support, as a personal tutor, that could be really, really benefit. It was funny, I was just sitting in the morning having tea with my daughter. She's 10 years old, and I asked her, Noor, what are your thoughts on AI? You know, she's grade 5, and it's exciting for me to understand, and I see her using it. What are your thoughts? She's like, I think it's really good. I actually recorded her voice, but maybe I'll share the audio file with you, Kenneth, later. But she said, I think it's really good, but if I'm writing a script, I want it to write it for me. I want it to teach me how to do that. And then I would write it myself. And then I could share my draft and it can tell me what mistakes I made so I can fix my mistakes myself. So I think that aspect is really powerful for me. And she was basically alluding to the idea of students using it as a personal tutor. The other one I think is teachers could really benefit from, I don't want to use the word lesson planning, but really breaking it down into sort of the important sequences of when they're teaching, and then having that expertise to be able to understand what is it that I need to do. And AI can be an amazing tool for educators to say, I'm going to be teaching fractions and how to add them, and these are all the steps. And the generative AI can help produce enough number of drafts for retrieval practice or other opportunities for learning. And I think teachers can really say, oh, I want to design it based on cognitive load theory, or what is the prior knowledge? What vocabulary are they going to need? So that sitting down and thinking requires a lot of time. And we have been doing it. Teachers have been doing it. And sometimes great, sometimes it's getting missed out. Now we have this tool that can really quickly think for us, and we could use that as a draft and sort of work off of it. I'll pause here because I want to make sure that my other wonderful colleagues have a chance to share some benefits as well.
Okay, thank you. And Dylan?
So I think the impact of AI is going to depend on the country, the system that's in place. So I think in countries that use examination systems where there's no school-based assessment, the impact of AI is going to be far more positive or far less disruptive than it is in countries like the United States, where teachers allow students to take away work and bring it back and gain credit for it. So in the words of Tyler Cowen, homework is over. We are no longer going to be able to trust the work that our students bring back unless we have some means of authenticating what they've done. So I think that we're going to have to re-engineer a lot of our processes so that the students bring back work, which may or may not have been produced by AI, but then we have to say, okay, so explain this bit to me. Why did you make that choice? And so we're going to need to set in place procedures for authentication. I think the point that Nidhi's daughter made is really important. The fact is that I think that AI is going to be really good at helping students complete the work and get a better grade. I doubt whether anytime soon it's going to be able to improve the learner. And the trouble is that AI relies on very short feedback loops to do its learning. The problem with education is the feedback loops are very long. So we've seen evidence recently, reading recovery was successful at the end of first grade and a major disaster for the same students by the time they reached fourth grade. So my worry is that AI will help students get a better grade for a piece of work, but it won't actually promote the learning. The other point, just to pick up on another point that Nidhi made, is that I think that there are some people out there claiming that AI will be a great change and they're quoting evidence, but you have to be very careful about that evidence. So several of the vendors of systems are saying that when this system was implemented with fidelity, there was a big impact in student learning. But typically they're finding that only around 5% of the users are implementing with fidelity. You might say that's okay for those 5%. Well, I don't think it is, because it could be that AI is so hard to use well and implement with fidelity, you're not getting an AI effect, you're getting a teacher quality effect. What you're doing is just selecting out the most effective teachers. So I try to steer a course between the people at one extreme, like Sal Khan, who say it's going to revolutionize teaching, and others like Ben Riley, who says that basically it's all hype. I think there are positive things out there. I think
Yes.
it'll help teachers plan work more effectively. It's getting much better at doing work at different levels of quality, which used to be prevented by the guardrails. So there used to be guardrails preventing ChatGPT from producing low quality student work, but it's great for getting students to critique. So I think we're getting better and better at that. Here's why I think where I think that AI may have the greatest benefit, and it's kind of counterintuitive. I think AI is already doing a very good job of coaching teachers to improve their classroom practice. The fact that you can go to a non-human, non-boss source of feedback on the questions that you have about your own practice may be the most powerful use of AI in education.
Okay, thank you. And then Arnold.
Yeah, so we're trying to be positive here, right? So opportunities. No, so
Yes.
I think there are lots of other comments I'd like to make. I don't agree that artificial intelligence is intelligent. It's a structural probabilistic system. It doesn't think. It constructs permutations of existing data. So it doesn't think, it doesn't reason, it doesn't actually learn in the traditional sense of learning. It's not, but it is building probabilistic networks and structures and tokenizing information in very interesting ways that have turned out, because of the enormous computing power we can throw at it, to be much more effective than we had suspected. And you know, most of the algorithms that we're using, in fact, were available already in the 1990s, but they function very differently when you can feed them with the type of volume of data that's now, digital data that's now available. So that's, I think, one of the potential benefits of AI is in opening up access and structured access to that information, the ability to reason about that information base together to a much broader segment of society. So if we want to take the positive perspective on it, and you only need to sit in the London Science Museum for an afternoon and listen to parents explaining the experiments to their kids to understand that actually adults make stuff up as well, right? So it's not just AI. And so if you don't have the answer, the temptation as a parent is to make it up on the fly, and your answer is going to be as bad as AI's, if not worse. And so, you know, at the point where we can train one of these tools to provide higher fidelity answers in a variety of situations more often than the average human parent, I think it's a win. You know, so let's stop there.
Okay, so maybe continue with a round of challenges and risks with AI then. We take the same order, so Nidhi again.
Oh, I was going to say, I think we should go backwards because Arnold's like, I have so much to say.
No, it's all good. Go for it.
Okay, so one of the, well, there's obvious risks, right? Like infidelity. The biggest one when it became first this such an easy way to chat with this tool. You know, it was already there. It's just that it wasn't accessible to an everyday household user, right? That it became a chat. That was a big sort of transformation that OpenAI did. It's like now you can use it as a chat, and we all knew how to chat with the system. So we started talking to it, and it started telling us all this information. And so my initial response back in 2022 was that, well, if kids can just, or learners or me can just ask it to do something and it writes it, and at the first instance, it actually feels right at the first instance. But then you unpack it and like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of like, there's a lot of gibberish in there, right? Adults make things up. Yeah, I make things up too, Arnold. I like that. My first reaction was, I think in that future sort of reaction, it's not just going to be enough. We need to tell students what they need to learn. It's going to really become about what the importance of learning, like the why of learning is going to become so important. Like otherwise students going to say, I know we could say that with Google also. We've said that with calculators, computers, and all these big technologies that have come around us. But with AI, it's literally just a voice command or a prompt away for your essay to be ready. And it's like, what is in it me to learn? And I think that would be really important. That risk I truly see, where we're losing this idea that, do I really even need to learn? Like it's easy. And we already know that learners, especially the younger ones, but older ones too, tend to go to the easier route, right? So that would be a big risk. My other big risk is I often like to use a couple of sort of analogies or phrases for AI, generative AI especially. I find it's a prompter's pleaser tool. It will tell you what you want to hear. It will, if it doesn't know that I believe that learning styles is a myth sort of theory, and I haven't told my sort of logged in version that don't give me this anymore, up until that point, it'll keep pleasing me with what I want to hear. And so that risk at any point, are you in quicksand and are you you're just gonna not know until it's already happened. And then the second thing I like to say is that it comes across as so intelligent. Certainly, here's the you know, those words. And I often find that the instant reaction for a new user, for younger users who are still trying to build a knowledge base, would think that this is amazing and I should go with it. But I've felt with more knowledge, but we've had the chance to actually acquire knowledge, but I worry for the younger ones. It's really like a cotton candy. It's like, it looks so big, and then but you just squish it down, it's like there's really nothing. It's like a lot of repetition. So that's a big risk for me. And I'm sure there's there's lots more, but this is my biggest worry, that is it going to just remove this thought from a big percentage of our learners, that do I even need to do this when I have something that can do it in seconds for me? And I think that's a huge danger that we're all going to be facing. So our job as educators, as teachers, is already manyfold, and there's that added thing to it too.
Okay.
Shall I go next?
Yes, you're next.
So I'm still confused most of the time about AI. I've seen people saying that it can reason, some people saying it can't. My thought about this is that we may be at a point where people were about 100 and something years ago about powered flight. So for the first 20 or 30 years, people tried to fly like birds, and we were completely unsuccessful. And then we figured out that you could actually fly in different ways. So it may be that even if AI never gets to the power of reasoning like human beings, it may be able to produce the results of reasoning just as effectively. I just don't know. In terms of the major risks, I think the kind of cataclysmic risk is that AI invalidates our current model of education as being a preparation for the world of work. So when you look at the potential for automation with and without generative AI, what you find is that those with low levels of education don't actually see much of a difference in the potential for the automation of the job with AI. But what's really interesting is the people we regard at the top end, masters and PhDs, the fact is that AI can actually automate a lot of what they do. So the whole model of education, preparing people to be trained as doctors or lawyers or accountants, those jobs may not exist in anything like the same way, and certainly not the same volume as in the future. So the big question, the big risk I think that AI poses is, how do we design an education system that prepares young people for a life of leisure? And I think people are horrified by that idea, although it was the pinnacle in ancient Greece. The idea of having to work for a living was demeaning. And so I think that the big risk is that we carry on trying to train students for a world that will not exist by the time they get to it. So in terms of analogy, it's a bit like training students to do long division when the calculator has already been invented. That's my concern.
Okay, Arnold.
Take a different pitch. And I'll focus perhaps more on the threat to learning and to education. People have a predisposition to be cognitively lazy, and to avoid additional effort where it's not required. And it's a genetic trait, it's a survival trait. So it's quite deeply rooted in us. And so if we can avoid work, we do. And when we can avoid the pain of thinking and the pain of growth and the uncertainty that is associated with putting ourselves in situations where we learn a lot, the risk of AI is that it reinforces that offloading sort of reflex, and we choose to be comfortable rather than to exert ourselves and to learn. But at the same time, if you take what Dylan was saying there, it's, the golden age ideal was to have unlimited leisure to engage in truly creative pursuits, to be a great artist, a great poet, a great musician, or whatever, to fulfill yourself. And I think those drives are also a part of this. And so, but if you back all of that back, you say, what's the immediate risk? I think the immediate risk is that there is some emerging evidence that in the interaction with these systems, we systematically exclude the less able, and we systematically empower the more intelligent and the more able. And so there is a huge risk here that in this process of interacting with this new tool, that we systematically disempower the weaker learners and cause their situation to become even worse than it already is, whilst providing extremely powerful tools to accelerate the learning of the upper 10 or 15 or 20%. I think that's the big risk, and we have to handle that risk.
Being lazy, that's what we are human beings are trained to. Or And I'm just sitting here listening into all kinds. I had prepared some questions, but sort of time mind flies. But picking up on what Arnold just said, how can we ensure that students? I mean, learning is hard. We need to think hard, and the students need to struggle. Even if you want to be very creative in music, you have to practice your guitar, or maybe we don't, because I enjoy music, but I never took the struggle to learn how to play guitar. Now I can use some AI tools and compose music, and they can even suggest the lyrics even. But still we need to foster kids, even though we want leisure time and nice less struggle. But how can we ensure that kids and adults continue to struggle and thinking hard, and instead of avoiding that struggle by just using AI without the mind, or so to speak? Yeah, I'm not sure who want to pick up on that one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, maybe I'll start. So AI is just, in my world, another tool, right? How you choose to use that tool is sort of up to you. We know that AI as a tool breaks the link between process and product. And so, as Dylan was saying, any assessment process that is based on products that are produced in an environment where you can't see the process are useless in terms of assessing anybody's learning in the future. So there are huge implications of this, and then how we relate to that in terms of the question that you just asked, right? Because in order to create those situations where people feel empowered to engage with their learning, feel that it's justified to put in the effort, we have to, I think, present them with something that they realistically can see in their future, and where they will use AI constructively in their future to do something that they want to do, where they can feel creative and fulfilled. There's an enormous power in that, wow, I did it sort of experience, right? And I think in education, if I can just reflect for one tiny second more, education has an interesting challenge. We have a lot of unwilling learners in the system who don't want to be elite. They're there because the system says they have to be there for a certain period of time. In sport, it's not at all questioned that you need to train, that you need to try hard. So what is it that's so different about, if I want to be an elite sports person, there is no, there's a general acceptance in the population that that's going to take hard work and effort, and you're going to need to train like mad, and it's going to hurt, and, and you have to be tough, and blah, blah, blah. And we don't have at all the same rhetoric about education, which is preparing you for the rest of your life, which is sort of interesting.
Yeah.
So how do we change that?
By making it relevant. I think we're asking people to do a lot of things that they can't understand the relevance of.
There's one other point, I think, that Daniel Willingham emphasizes. We have to give young learners a user manual for the brain. So in other words, we have to get them to believe that the kinds of things that they find easy are not going to help them learn. And I think most young children, if you ask them, if you want to get stronger, is it better to lift weights that are easy to lift, or is it better to lift weights that are more difficult to lift? They'll tell you that it's better to lift the more difficult weights. And yet those same children will prefer easy activities. So I think there's a book that Daniel Wiliam has written for older students, Outsmart Your Brain. But I think the big idea here is we have to just embrace this idea. And I think the other point that's really important is this idea of deliberate practice.
Yeah.
That, getting good at something, not just sport, but also playing a musical instrument, scuba diving, X-ray radiography. The research shows that what you need is deliberate practice.
Yes.
And that is not enjoyable. That's the whole point. I say to people, if you're enjoying your violin practice, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard, but it's instrumental in achieving increases in performance. The other thing that I think that is worth factoring into here is that we do see people choosing to play football, what the Americans call soccer, on a Saturday morning because it's fun, even though they're not very good at it.
Mhm.
Why do they play football rather than going to watch really elite people? The fact is, it's connection, it's collaboration, it's collaboration within a team to compete against another team, and so I think we have to. We're going to be forced to look in more detail at those deeply human values
Yeah.
and think about how AI is going to support those. So yes, Ava, you're right. You can compose a piece of music on a piece of with a piece of software on a laptop, but it's not the same
Not
as
the same.
improvising live with somebody with a
Of
group of
course.
3 or 4 other
Mhm.
musicians.
No.
Mhm.
And
I
I
don't
also
think
need to
AI
practice how to use the AI tool.
exactly. Well, but you also need to play the musical instrument so that you can respond immediately to something that another musician has done. And so I think we will still have people wanting to play musical instruments, even if AI could produce it better. Because actually, and this is something I've learned from digital music, when you quantize music, when you actually put all the notes exactly on the beat, it isn't any good. And
Mhm.
I'm skeptical of AI's ability to do what jazz musicians do in terms of producing changes in rhythm, listening to their colleagues, bouncing ideas off. That I think the future will belong to the people who can take advantage of those opportunities.
Mhm. I'm gonna say a couple of things, and it's kind of like all tying in a few of the thoughts that my wonderful colleagues have said here. Um, I think one of the things we want to talk more about with especially younger learners, but with everyone, is this idea of that knowledge is just absolutely beautiful. Skill is absolutely beautiful because that's really your own. My kids are, I have 3 young kids and they're not at home because they weren't allowed to be because it gets loud. My office is in the basement and they play upstairs. But where are they right now? They're at a Taekwondo class and it's hard work. A lot of repetition. You just got to watch a taekwondo or ballet or dance or any kind of class, drills after drills, repetition after repetition, lots of memorization, doing it over and over and over again. Why are they doing that? Somehow they feel that this is just amazing once they're able to do it. Then they perform those pomsaes in competitions, they get their medals. Okay, those are all eventual rewards, but they're not getting that reward every single class. But when they come home, they're like, Mama, you got to see this. And it was hard work. My kids play the piano. I watch them learn the right hand first, learn the left hand first, over and over, separate, and then bring it all. And then they feel amazing. So knowledge is beautiful, skill building is beautiful. The second thing I would say is that we have to continue talking about this emphasis over on the process and not just the product. This idea when my kids do something, and I always ask them, it's like, how did that make you feel? Right? I love working out. I love running. My kids like to run. It's not the distance. I did 10K. It doesn't matter. It's like, how did that make me feel when I was able to do it with my own physical body? Same thing with learning, as Dylan already said too. It's like in sport, we don't question this. It's just obvious, right? In music, we don't question this. But I think in learning also, we got to bring back this idea that what you have in your brain, your knowledge, your committed knowledge to your long-term memory, that's really yours. And it's just such a beautiful thing to be able to feel those things. And I think those conversations, if we can have more of those in classrooms, at homes. So there's a role for parents to be made here. There's a role for teachers. There's a role for us all as a society, as a community, that process is really, at the core of it, we are reasoning for a different reason, not the way AI does, which, it doesn't reason as well, but we do. And that I think that conversation, we can't have enough of that. And hopefully that could continue sort of building this idea of kids would want to learn. So.
Just a quick comment. Don't wait for any talking orders. Just jump in whenever you like.
Oh, then I just want to say one more thing too. What Arnold had said earlier, this was in the sort of risks, the big risk. And I think Arnold pointed out to this very, very important idea. And I wanted to add one more thing to it. It was the equity issue. You said empowering the already powerful, the ones with more knowledge. You can critically analyze the product that is coming out of the AI generated sort of, text or whatever, and then say, no, this is bad, this is good. And I'm going to make mine even better. I read a recent study also where they had 4 different drafts, and one was human generated revised by AI, one was AI generated revised by human, and there are a couple more. And at the end, the best one was the one that was human generated, revised by AI, then human revised again. So again, empowering the already powerful, right? So there is an equity piece there. So I think we have to be very careful. And then I don't want to miss saying the notion of an immense amount of bias that it comes up with. I mean, especially with the visual representations, I've tested it, and it is, it's hilarious almost, right? It's like, give me a visual of world leaders, and it was like, it was not how I would imagine it, right? Especially as a woman of color here. And it's extremely important that that risk exists. If we're using it, it is making us believe a certain way. The bias is real. And because it said it with such convincing power, that it's very easy for many to believe. We've seen the critical aspect and we say, no, I'm going to call that out. But that may not be the case. And the direction where the world is heading right now, I think even more important that we need to call out those kind of biases that it is absolutely filled with, because it's just getting information from the entirety of the internet world that we have fed to it.
The good news is that people like Sam Weinberg have made great progress in helping young people become more skeptical about what they find online. So he's got a number of studies that show you can really change how people work. I'm worried about elites as well, but I think that my reading of the trends is that the elites will be a very, very small number. We're talking about handfuls of people. And what I'm interested to see is what happens when doctors become regarded as low-skill workers because what they do can be reproduced, certainly diagnostic doctors, maybe not surgery. What happens when doctors are regarded as low-skill workers because their skills can be done by AI, but plumbers and electricians are regarded as elite because they do things that nobody else can do? So yes, there are some equity issues here, but we may actually see a major upending of our traditional valuing of people who are brain workers, and we'll be returning back to those who are basically much more to do with embodied cognition, everything from ballet dancers to electricians to plumbers. The fact is, AI is going to be a long time doing anything in that region. I mean, I know that Figure and AI and OpenAI are working together on robotics, but I think the physical realm, the embodied realm, is going to become increasingly important as a forum for human development and flourishing.
You can say something.
Well, the equity issue is one of my main concerns. And I guess that's why I see education and compulsory education more important than ever, so that people get engaged and also get the knowledge to access and to harvest the benefits and also downsides of AI. But also some other ethical issues that I've been thinking about is the data. We collect data of all kinds. We train AI on data already existing, but then we use the kids. They upload their essays, their voice. Some people record lessons. They record facials and young kids. And so what are you? And people are experimenting, trying all kinds of being lazy. We record this meeting we have instead of making minutes. We let the teams
AI will actually just transcribe it for you. So that's no problem.
Yeah, and if I analyze data I collect for a research study, I just let it someone else do it or not. But again, the collection of data. How can we make sure that the kids' data are not just
it's already too late.
It's too late.
Yeah. Any kid who owns an iPhone, their face is already profiled in a large number of databases. Anybody who owns an intelligent device that's listening to you basically all the time, that you don't know where the data is going. So, I mean, from my perspective, I think that's a too late argument. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be capable of protecting that data, but maybe it doesn't matter, because it's going to be so flooded with machine-generated data that you won't be able to find the human data after a few more decades of this. So, I think another big concern that we should all have is the environmental impact of AI. It's completely undiscussed. It's one of the weirdest social phenomena I've seen for quite a while. We talk about air travel, which contributes about 2% of global emissions. AI is estimated to have grown with the annual electricity consumption of Japan in the last 2 years. And if it continues to grow at the current rate, it will match the electricity consumption of the US within a 10-year period. So are we prepared to pay that much of our environment for something that generates nice cat pictures? I'm not prepared to do that. Oh, by the way, just as an analogy, every time you generate a picture, you consume enough electricity to load your mobile phone from 0 to 100%. It gives us a feeling of the scale of each of these interactions.
That's certainly something that struck me when I saw Apple's new iPhone with, built-in intelligence, and the thing that they were touting that it could do was create new emojis. I mean, is that what we want from AI?
And we need more. You were missing that, right?
Yeah. I miss a redhead emoji.
I'll make you one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I agree with Arnold. I think with the data privacy and safety security, I think it might be a little too late, but now the solution's probably just like over sort of inundating it with so much data that it's like but I do think that making those careful decisions, and again it comes with the conversation, like that worries me. I see all these organizations create your avatar, upload 1 minute of your video with you speaking, your voice, and then we'll just start generating videos for you and you just need text. And it's like, how is that not worrying people? Are we that lazy? And it goes back to the lazy argument. It is hard to make a good quality video. It is hard to show your vulnerabilities. It is hard to show your uhs and ums and all that kind of stuff. But it is easy for me to do 1 minute of video, give a sample of Nidhi, and then do that. I wouldn't do it. I don't want to do it. I will not do it. And I recommend others not to do it either. But it is happening, and that we're too late is a reality. Like I'm seeing these pictures now, it's hard to see, hard to tell. Is it real? Is it not? And we won't be able to, the deep fake is so there. And that's absolutely a worrying thing. Keeps me up at night, especially as a parent of 3 young kids. Right. And of course, as a teacher who deals with younger students as well. But there's a big worry. And I think again, the conversation, which is exactly what we're doing right now, needs to happen. The more teachers should know, the more parents should know, and the more kids should know about it, and using it wisely, using it for the positives that we are trying to list here as well, but then also being cautious. And thank you, Arnold, for bringing the notion of environmental impact. I didn't think about it either. And it's true, my phone, I have a relatively new phone, and it's got the AI powered thing. So I don't have to think, basically it thinks for me. And it's like, I don't use it for that purpose, but every morning it wants to tell me, this is what you could do, this is what you could do. And it's like, no, I want to continue using the neocortex that we have spent millions of years evolving to. And the intelligence lives there. But I do get a nice heart emoji.
There you go.
This is actually a talk that could go on for hours, but our time
Sounds
is
like
quite limited, so we are coming almost to an end. So we'll let each of your guests try to summarize the most important takeaway you think is for our audience. What should they have as a takeaway from this talk? 1 or 2 takeaways.
I'll start, just to give the others some time to think. I think the most important message, the most important takeaway is keeping the human in the loop. The idea is that AI is not anytime soon going to be safe enough to let loose on children in education. And therefore, we have to understand that the teachers need to evaluate the output and then apply a critical lens to it. It can be very useful. Craig Barton's done some very nice work on AI generating misconceptions about what are the most common student misconceptions about negative numbers, for example. And some of them are actually spot on, and some of them are crazy because they're not actually misconceptions, they're actually correct conceptions. So as long as we keep the human in the loop, I think we should be able to use AI as a force for reducing teacher workload, increasing staff well-being, and cutting back on this incredible loss of teaching force that is happening in many countries in the world just because teachers are getting burned out because of the pressure they're under. So I do see it as potentially helping with workload and helping teacher retention, but we have to keep the humans in the loop. As soon as the AI is in charge, I think we're in trouble.
I will say what I said earlier, having the conversation about the beauty of the process, beauty of knowledge, beauty of skill building, that the hard work feeling, it feels amazing. You know, before going to yoga class, you never want to go because it's like, but you feel good afterwards. So remembering that, having the conversation, knowledge is absolutely beautiful. But then I also want to say that we got to keep the wheel in our hands. We got to continue ruling it and controlling that. We need to remember that. And last thing would be, it is artificial, and we, the humans, are the real deal, and real's just always nice. You know, you wouldn't want to eat a plastic apple. It doesn't taste good. It's not real thing. So we are real, and it is artificial. We can use it for its benefits, for offloading some of the administrative tasks, but I think a regular reminder that I could get lazy and I don't want to do that. I want to continue using my abilities that I've worked years to build. It's kind of like a drug, but because it's around there, we don't go about consuming, you know, substance all the time. So we have to, what is that stops us from doing that, right? And when we can't control it, then we get into the dangerous realm. So we have to use that power to continue not letting it do all the work for us, but just the ones that we feel like generating transcript. It's a great use for that, but we still got to read it and make meaning of that. Don't let it make meaning for you. So choosing wisely. And I think that wisdom we need to continue tapping into. And I think it goes back to what Dylan said, keep the human in there.
All right, I guess that gives the word to me. We've talked about generative AI a lot. Those are the visible AI systems that produce things. The more subtle and pervasive AI systems are the ones that you don't see, that are built into everyday applications. That manipulate the information that you see, that recommend more stuff to you that you will like, that filter you into a bubble world where you're kept comfortable and kept insulated from things that might upset you, or things that you might not like to buy, or what all of these recommender systems, classification systems, profiling systems that are built into nearly every product that you will interact with online, and indeed many products that you interact with physically. That is possibly the most dangerous part of AI, because you don't see it. You're not really aware of how it's manipulating your thought patterns and the ways that you make decisions. And it is incredibly subtle and extremely powerful. We outlawed subliminal advertising for a reason. AI, I think, will give us a new form of subliminal advertising and the ability to influence large segments of populations without them even being aware of it. And we need to have I think, if we're going to take something away from this, have a think about that.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for a great talk. It has really been a privilege, and I think that concludes this, and we give a big hand to our guests.
Thank you.